"Please don't kill me, Grammy." This was the pleading scream of 6-year-old Mason Rhinehart before his 63-year-old grandmother stabbed him repeatedly in the chest. The 5th of August, 2014, started like any other in the Rhinehart's Tallahassee home. During the summer, Martha White watched over her 2 grandsons, Mason and Aiden, while their parents were at work. It was 2 days before Mason's 7th birthday, a day he would never celebrate. Mason Rhinehart and his 8-year-old brother, Aiden, were sitting on the couch playing video games when their grandmother told Mason she had a surprise for him and led the child to the bathroom. Moments later, Aiden heard his brother scream, "I don't want to die." Aiden ran to his brother's aid, but the bathroom door was locked. Aiden phoned his father, Zach White, and told him what was happening. His father told Aiden to pound on the bathroom door and shout as loud as he could. When there was no answer, his father told him to run and hide. Spring Rhinehart, mother of the 2 boys, rushed home and managed to force open the bathroom. She saw a blanket lying on the bathroom floor with Mason's toes poking out from beneath it. As she lifted the blanket, she saw the bloodied boy. He had been repeatedly stabbed in the chest. Mason was rushed to the hospital, but died shortly after. 8-year-old Aiden told police he saw his grandmother rushing out of the house, but not before she told him that she had a surprise for him too. Police found White in a nearby park, covered in blood, holding a bottle of wine and Xanax. She was arrested and later charged with the murder of her young grandson, Mason Rhinehart. In court documents, White claimed she had been tortured by her grandson's mother for years and was fed up. To avoid the death penalty, Martha White entered into a plea deal. She will serve the rest of her natural life in Florida prison. On April 3rd, 1985, in Virginia, the bodies of Derek and Nancy Haysom were found brutally murdered in their suburb home. The couple had been stabbed to death. Nancy Haysom was found in the kitchen, lying in swirls of blood. Derek Haysom was found sprawled out on the floor and caked with blood. Police determined there had been no forced entry, but they did find several footprints in the blood. A later forensic study determined the blood was of 4 different types. It was also determined that 3 people had earlier been at the dining room table eating a meal. The Haysoms had one daughter, 20-year-old Elizabeth, who in college met her then boyfriend, 18-year-old Jen Soring. A diplomat's son, Jen Soring is a native of Germany, and Elizabeth Haysom, a native of Canada. On Friday, March 29th, 1985, the 2 rented a Chevy and drove to Washington. They then checked into a hotel and went to see the movie Porky's Revenge. Later in the investigation, it was determined that the couple had driven over 400 miles further than their reported trip. On their return, they were notified Elizabeth's parents had been murdered. Her boyfriend later claimed Elizabeth had asked him to purchase the movie tickets as an alibi for the murders. Everything was pointing to Elizabeth, but her boyfriend would do anything to protect her. He decided he would confess to the murders in an attempt to keep Haysom from facing death. He believed as a diplomat's son, he would have immunity, or at most, serve out a few years in a German juvenile detention center. But he was wrong. Most false confessions come after grueling hours of police questioning and repeated threats, but not with this one. Jens intended to give a false confession, if only he had known all the details of the crime. During his confession, he claimed he did the killings alone. He didn't know 4 blood types had been found at the scene. The swirls of blood found around Nancy Haysom's body were created by someone trying to clean up the blood. This was not part of his confession. He knew nothing about it. His description of Nancy Haysom's clothing was also incorrect. He claimed he had not stabbed the victims, yet the body had been stabbed more than 38 times. Eventually, he would recant the confession, but as far as the police were concerned, he was the killer. Later, Jens would be convicted of 2 murders. Elizabeth Haysom later admitted to the killing and was sentenced to 2 life sentences. But for her boyfriend, nothing changed. He remained in prison. He maintained Elizabeth had done the killings alone. Only after 33 years and 6 months was Jens released. Despite being sentenced to 90 years in prison, Elizabeth Haysom was paroled in 2019 and handed over to the Canadian authorities. In the early hours of Valentine's Day, 2013, 29-year-old model Reeva Steenkamp lay dead on the floor of an upmarket Pretoria home. Cradling her torn and bloodied skull was Oscar Pistorius, famed South African Olympic athlete. At the London Olympic Games, Oscar Pistorius, by name Blade Runner and by lateral below-the-knee amputee, was the first amputee to ever compete in an Olympic track and field event. Days later, Oscar was charged with the murder of his girlfriend, charges that would lead to the most famous criminal trial in the nation's history. According to Oscar, he had accidentally shot Reeva, having mistaken her for an intruder. While in a darkened bedroom, Oscar believed he heard the wooden frame of a bathroom window being slid open. He retrieved his handgun from the side of the bed and slowly made his way down the small hallway leading to an ensuite bathroom. He heard another sound and reacted by firing 4 shots into the wooden toilet cubicle door. Returning back to the bathroom, he discovered Reeva was not in bed. He retrieved his prosthetic legs and ran back into the bathroom, calling out her name. Eventually, Oscar frantically broke open the door with a cricket bat to find his girlfriend slumped over the toilet with blood pouring from her head. He claims he sat holding her for a moment and then carried her lifeless body down the stairs to the main floor of the house. Throughout the lengthy trial, Oscar gave the same account of the events, maintaining the shooting was a horrible accident. At the trial, the state claimed the killing was not an accident, but an outright murder. Through a series of WhatsApp messages, they argued the relationship between Oscar and Reeva was troubled and she was afraid of Oscar's jealousy and disregard for her feelings. Had the killing been an accident, the state argued, Oscar didn't need to fire 4 shots into the door, but could have fired a warning shot first. Oscar had not called police after the shooting. He phoned a friend for help. They questioned why he hadn't noticed Reeva was not in bed before he moved toward the bathroom. While Oscar was shooting through the door, there was no screaming from the other side. In fact, there was no noise at all. The defense claimed Oscar's disability made him hypervigilant and a fear for his life. He moved toward the danger rather than fleeing from it, an assertion later confirmed by psychologists. As Oscar was the only person who knew what happened, the defense put him on stand to testify on his own behalf. This turned out to be the worst decision of the trial. Oscar was a terrible witness, and rather than answering the state's questions, he attempted to argue the case. Oscar was not found guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The state appealed the sentence to the Supreme Court, arguing the trial judge had made a fundamental error in interpreting the law. Even if Oscar had thought an intruder was behind the door, he would have reasonably known that shooting through the door into such a small area would have killed anyone on the other side. Whether it was Reeva or not, the killing was intentional. The Supreme Court of South Africa overturned the earlier sentence and replaced it with a sentence of 12 years in prison. Oscar remains in a medium security prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2023.